Welcome back to the Maple Farmer. I'm Nikki, and today I am tapping trees in my own backyard. So I am doing 9 taps using buckets. I have my buckets right here. This is great for a small scale setup. So whether you're new to maple syrup, just starting out, or have been tapping for years but are tapping in your backyard, just a few trees, this is the way to go. Now this is my first year doing small scale production, and I haven't used buckets since I was a very young child. And when we did that, we only tapped a couple trees in our backyard, but I never did the entire process because my dad, by the time I was born, he was already tapping 3,500 trees and he just kept growing from there. So when we did use the buckets, we collected the sap in the buckets and took it to the larger evaporator to boil it down to make maple syrup. But this year I am doing everything in my backyard, start to finish. And we're going to start with tapping trees today. We'll be collecting the sap and boiling it down on another video, but we're going to tap trees today, so let's get started. I'm at this beautiful red maple tree, and I wanted to show you the tools that you need to get started. So first, to collect the sap, we have our sap bucket. I have a lid. This will keep out any rainwater, debris, try to keep that sap nice and clean. Have a hammer for tapping in that spout. And the most important part is getting the sap to actually collect, so extracting the sap from the tree, and that's what we use our spout for. So right here is a spout. You can see it has a hook on it, so that way we can hang the bucket, and it has a little hole through the middle here, so that way you can attach your lid and cover that bucket up. And then of course, we have our drill. Now you always want to make sure that your drill bit matches your spout. So I'm using a 5/16 spout with a 5/16 drill bit. And if you look closely at my drill bit here, you'll see that I have electrical tape wrapped around it. So you only want to drill into a tree 1.5 to 2 inches deep. So I marked the drill bit at 2 inches, and that's where I wrapped my electrical tape. So that way I know it's a visual guide that that is the deepest I want to go on the tree. And if it's a smaller tree, I'll only go about 1.5 inches deep. But 2 inches is your maximum depth. So now we're going to drill this tree, and these trees have never been tapped, so it's great because you don't have to look for a clean spot on the tree. But if they have been tapped in the past, you want to make sure that you are tapping away from an old tap hole. So when you are tapping, you want the drill bit to be at a very slight angle. The reason for this angle is so that when the sap is running, it doesn't pool in the tap hole. It will help it with gravity to flow from the tree into the spout and into the bucket. Another important thing is you want to try to be as stable as possible when you're drilling, because you want to prevent wobble, because you want a nice clean tap hole. So with all of that being said, let's tap the tree. So you'll see the shavings on this are light colored or cream, and that's a sign of a nice healthy tree. And if you look at this, the tree is already running like crazy. You can see that sap dripping down. So it is prime syrup season, prime sap weather right there. If you tap a tree and it doesn't start flowing with sap immediately, don't worry about it because it will start flowing. Unless the tree is dead, you may want to look up, double check, make sure the tree is a healthy tree. But in a lot of cases, if it didn't start flowing yet, it's just because the sap didn't start flowing. So just give it time, the sap will start running. I should have moved my bucket a little away from the tree. My shavings got into the bucket, but let's tap this spout into the tree. Make sure there's no debris in the bucket here. And then lastly, we want to attach the lid. So in terms of height, you can tap a little bit lower. I'm so used to tapping higher because at Boxer Maple we use tubing that runs, so then our drop lines are 3 foot high. So I'm probably tapping a little bit high for buckets. My next one will be lower. there's a hole in the spout and this wire just goes right through it, clips it up, and your lid sits right on top to protect that from rainwater, debris, keep that sap nice and clean. Now we're on to a sugar maple. If you want to know the difference between a sugar maple and a red maple, or all the different types of maples, I actually have a video describing that, so you can click on the link above. But let's tap this sugar maple. And you'll notice I wear gloves, so I always wear gloves when I'm tapping trees. And it's a really nice day outside, so I switched out gloves. I'm wearing a lighter pair. This is a duck canvas glove, and it's abrasion resistant here on the backside, which is really great because when you're drilling trees, a lot of times my knuckles will scrape against the bark, so that helps protect them. That's why I'm always wearing gloves when I'm tapping trees. And it has a padded palm here as well. And you can use your phone, which is awesome, so you don't have to take off your gloves and have your hands freeze if you want to record like I do when I record a lot of videos. But let's get to tapping. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks apparently, because I said I was going to tap this one lower, and here we are, still tapping high. I'll get it on the next one. Listen to that sap flow. Sounding good. And I don't think I actually mentioned, but these are Diggs gardening gloves. I'm actually going to be starting a garden this year, growing some of my own food to use in maple syrup recipes. I'm very excited about it, but yeah, Diggs gardening gloves. Check them out. I don't know if you can hear that, but you can just hear the sap dripping into the buckets. That's the best sound. When tapping a tree, you want to make sure it's at least 10 inches in diameter, which means directly across from one side of the tree to the other. So at least 10 inches, which equates to about 40 years old, before you start tapping a tree. If you tap it too young, that could harm the tree and it won't be producing for many years. So we always want to use the tapping best practices, and no more than 3 taps per tree. So if you have an extremely large tree, you can put 3 taps on that tree. And this is, I'm talking giant trees. And a 2-tap tree, how I like to quickly identify a 2-tap tree is if I go and wrap my arms around it and my fingers can't touch and I'm like this, then I'll put 2 taps on that tree. But any tree like this size, is a 1-tap tree. Yeah. Now, these trees right now are running really well with sap. As soon as I tap them, the sap starts running. If you tap sooner and it's still cold outside, a lot of times when you tap, you're not going to have sap flowing right away. So don't tap another hole if that happens. Just wait. The sap will eventually flow. So if you look and watch my channel, a lot of times we are tapping when it's really cold outside. The sap is not flowing yet, but since I'm tapping just a couple trees in my backyard, I'm waiting longer. So the ideal time to tap your trees is when there's a freeze-thaw cycle, which means it's freezing at night, warming up during the day. That's what will really get those trees flowing. And the season will last 4 to 6 weeks. So it's an extremely short season. This year, the season started a lot later than it normally does. Usually the sap has already been flowing, we've been boiling, but we are in March and we're just starting to tap trees, which is pretty crazy. So just collecting sap is going to be a really short, fast season in my opinion. So when you want to tap your trees is in the late winter, early spring. That's when sap will flow, and you're looking for those freeze-thaw cycles. Make sure that branch isn't getting in there. Okay, we're good. This tree right here is a very large tree, and if you look up it, you'll see it actually has several different trunks. And I only have 2 buckets left, so I'm only hanging 2 buckets on it. But typically, if each of these trunks are at least 10 inches in diameter or larger, I would tap them. All set, got all of our trees tapped. Let's go check the first bucket. The sap is coming in hot here. We're gonna have plenty of sap in no time. You can see there's some debris in the bucket right here, so I'm actually gonna be running the sap through a pre-filter before I boil it. I'm not sure if you can see this on the video or not, but the sap is about to here. A tree can produce anywhere from a quarter to over a half gallon of syrup per tap, which means 10 to 20 gallons of sap. So if the sap is really running, your buckets can fill up pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that you're checking them and emptying them every single day. Typically, the rule of thumb is the fresher the sap, the better the syrup's going to be. So check those buckets and collect it every day. My trees are all tapped, so now I'm just collecting sap until I'm ready to boil. And if you guys can, please like and subscribe. And since I am brand new to buckets in small scale production, if you have any tips or tricks for me, please drop them below, and I'll see you next time.